Nazca, a remote desert plain in the Peruvian Andes, may hold the key to an ancient puzzle. On January 5th, 1973, we reported the possibility that the lines and figures etched on the mysterious plain marked the site of a landing made by astronauts thousands of years ago. Since then, the strange drawings, visible only from the air, have been photographed by aerial survey, satellite, and the Skylab astronauts. The lines at Nazca, when added to the evidence of other sites around the world, indicates that the Earth may not merely have been visited by ancient astronauts. It may, in fact, have been colonized by them. There are marks that have been left by past civilizations to indicate the presence on Earth of explorers who came across the divide of space. Did those colonists inspire the legends of gods who came from the skies? Can we find the historic fact of their presence in the myths of ancient man? 100 years ago, an amateur archaeologist decided that Homer's Iliad was not myth, but history. He followed the epic account through the Aegean Sea to Asia Minor, and there he found the ruins of the lost city of Troy. What other legendary places contain evidence that converts myth to history, that supports tales of events so far beyond the range of normal human experience they have for centuries been dismissed as allegory and legend? In the last 50 years, science has developed tools to date past events and probe ancient mysteries. So we are finding that old accounts take on new meaning.
If we look for evidence that the Earth has had visitors from outer space, the best book at this time we can use is the Bible once again. In the Bible, the Old Testament, the book of the prophet Ezekiel, gives us a very detailed account of a visit, actually of several visits of extraterrestrial beings to this Earth.
It's possible that in the course of our history in the last 13,000 years that ships from Epsilon Botis have come here, have conducted survey missions, possibly even had small settlements established here for a time and pulled out again.
As we left our tracks on the moon, so too must the ancient astronauts have set theirs on the Earth. If so, where is the evidence of their presence? Where are the artifacts they have left behind? Perhaps the clues are not all buried in the past.
Hi, Gemini 7 here, Houston, out of your 8.
Loud and clear. 7, go ahead.
Got bogey at 10 o'clock high.
This is Houston. Say again, 7.
So we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high.
Roger.
Gemini Control here again. The reference in that conversation was bogey. It was Borman who reported sighting the bogey. This is Gemini Control Houston at 4 hours, 24 minutes into the flight.
Bogey is the code word for an unidentified aircraft. But a bogey in space is almost beyond belief. Or is it?
The following program speculates on what might have happened. It is based on established facts, but it is not a news report.
The sun in our heavens will burn for another 4 billion years. Then it will expand to a red giant. It has happened elsewhere. Many suns in the universe have died. Somewhere in space, an advanced civilization may have seen the end approaching and begun the search for a new planet that could sustain life. We have come of age in space. Our own explorations tell us it is possible that man-like creatures might have come here in their quest for a place to regenerate life. If they had come from an Earth-like planet, this Earth would have been an ideal new home. And here they might have landed, in the mysterious Peruvian Andes, near a lake called Titicaca. From the shore, the outline of Titicaca has no pattern. Only when viewed from space does it take on the shape of a jaguar about to pounce. In the ancient language of the region, Titicaca means Stone of the Jaguar. Was it named by arriving space colonists? An arid mesa called the Altiplano fringes Lake Titicaca. On the barren, windswept plain, the air is thin, and corn does not grow. It is a harsh environment. Yet there is reason to believe that here, long ago, a colony was established by visitors from another planet. It is possible that the first inhabitants of the Altiplano are our dim and distant ancestors. We may never know what actually occurred here. Most of the traces have been obliterated. The Inca, who dominated this part of the world, erased the histories of the regions they conquered. But in the mounds, rubble, and broken walls of an Andean plain lie the ruins of a once great city. Called Tiahuanaco, it stands mysterious and unexpected at 13,000 feet above sea level. It might have housed the most advanced civilization of ancient times. Long before the Inca arrival, Tiahuanaco was a reality, and the question arises, how much did the Inca take away in plunder, and how much in technology? The Inca did not build Tiahuanaco, nor did the ancestors of Indians who now live on this desolate mountain plain. Who did create this city? Estimates of its age range from 1,200 to 15,000 years old. Could Tiahuanaco have been built by colonists possessed of a technology far more advanced than that of man? This subterranean temple is not unlike an anthropological museum or the trophy room of some big game hunter. The faces show a bewildering variety of shapes and expressions. Some are familiar, others alien, a range that covers the racial spectrum of man. Are these models of man or experimental designs for man? Grim helmeted carvings found in South America seem to trace their inspiration from the Tiahuanaco monolith. In 1927, the carvings were interpreted as an account of the Earth's original capture of the moon. The theory was dismissed as nonsense, but after 7 Apollo flights, there has emerged a similar theory that the moon has wandered into our solar system, only to be captured by the Earth. Of all the mysteries at Tiahuanaco, none loom quite as large as a monolithic archway called the Gate of the Sun. Cut from a single block of andesite, it weighs at least 10 tons. Beyond the twin questions of how it got here and how it was cut by people who did not possess metal tools, is the mystery of the strange creatures that run across its face. For the carefully chiseled lines depict birds that never flew in the skies above the Earth. The most arresting features are the eyes, which are composed of still another creature, figures barely discernible, but nonetheless familiar to us as space-helmeted astronauts. No less mysterious are the eyes of the god atop the arch. 2 tears are deeply etched into his cheeks, and no one can say why the sun god of Tiwanaku weeps. So it stands, a brooding, mysterious ruin, atop a desolate mountain plateau 13,000 feet in the air. Was it built by those who came to make a new home of planet Earth? "300 miles away, on another plain, lie the strange lines of Nazca. Nazca may have been a landing field, a base camp from which ancient astronauts took off to explore the planet they had found. Perhaps, but the lines at Nazca, which take shape only when viewed from the air, might have another function, one directly related to space and suborbital travel. For these lines, radiating in all directions, look not unlike the route maps of a modern-day airline. Do they point the way to other outposts on the Earth? A route map for the Earth's original colonists? If followed, where will they lead? One line pointing east leads to a remarkable, unexplained artifact, 300 miles away. No one can say when the great stone of Saiwiti was carved, nor do we know what tools were used, but here it stands. Various interpretations have called it a sacrificial altar, a city plan, a map of the universe, and a model of colonial outposts on Earth, complete even to the agricultural terraces that make farming possible in the mountains. The terraces in the Peruvian Andes, for example, have been in continuous use for centuries. They reach upwards to the ruins of an ancient city, complete with temple, astronomical observatory, and a fortress to guard the crops. Did the founding colonists design these mountain stepping stones for settling the planet? Sacsayhuaman is a megalithic fortress presumably built by the Inca. The snake marks a stone so heavily magnetized, it will cause a compass needle to spin wildly. Legend says the Inca kings received a special power from this stone. With it, their empire spread from the Pacific coast to the Amazon jungle, leaving a record of accomplishment wrapped in enigma. The Inca knew nothing of the wheel, and yet their roads are still in use today. They had no alphabet, yet they developed an engineering technology that built structures such as this. Or did they? Were they creators or inheritors? Descendants or beneficiaries of a civilization and culture transplanted to the Andes from somewhere else? Sacsayhuaman is built of enormous blocks of stone, cut and beveled to fit together with micrometer accuracy. No one has even a clue as to how these blocks, some weighing more than 100 tons, were quarried, shaped, transported, and set into place. 35 feet underwater and 1,000 yards off the northern shore of the island of Bimini in the Caribbean, there is another wall. There's absolutely no indication of who might have built it, but the huge blocks bear a striking resemblance to the masonry of the Incas. Some scientists claim it is a natural formation and not a wall at all. But if ocean currents cut the stones in the sea bottom, did they also cut them at right angles to each other? The Bimini Wall is but one of many mysteries in the Caribbean region known as the Bermuda Triangle. Here, ships and planes vanish under circumstances that defy all logical explanation. Just after the close of World War II in December 1945, 5 Navy fighter planes vanished without a trace, leaving a mystery that remains unanswered today. Their disappearance has been the subject of a 25-year investigation by magazine reporter Art Ford.
Well, a routine naval air patrol took off from the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station. 5 planes, 14 crew members, 5 different radios. After the planes were in the air a few hours, they vanished. 5 radios did not give a coherent reason why they vanished. The men were never seen again. No wreckage of the planes was ever found. There was no radio contact after they were lost. A search plane went up after them with 13 men aboard, with every bit of equipment necessary to find them. It vanished within 7 minutes. Particularly significant in the case of the missing planes was the radio transmission report that remains in the record in the archives in Washington. Lieutenant Robert F. Cox was flying out to try to find Flight 19. He said on the radio, "What is your present altitude? I will fly south to meet you." And Taylor, who commanded Flight 19, replied, "Don't come after me." He was warning his fellow flyers who were trying to rescue the plane, which they thought was lost, and he said, "They look like they're from outer space. Don't come after me."
More than 100 ships and airplanes have been lost in the Bermuda Triangle, taking with them 1,000 lives. There is no explanation for the disappearances that have taken place in clear weather and calm seas. But now we have one more question. Is this the corridor to outer space? Did the first colonists plant a homing device, a navigational aid, under these waters, a beacon for spacecraft to home in on, that somehow interferes with our own navigational devices? In the beginning, the Earth was a place of violent geologic change. Volcanoes thrust mountains upward. Islands were created and destroyed in the violent birth pangs of our world. In this same underwater volcanic cauldron, life may have had its beginnings. The principal basis of life is protein. The process by which life might have originated from inert chemicals is the subject of experiments by Dr. Sidney Fox at the Institute of Molecular Evolution at the University of Miami.
What's happening here is a splashing on a hot zone where the temperature is above the boiling point of water of a mixture of amino acids, water, and other volatile material. At this temperature, the water vaporizes, the volatile material leaves, and the small amino acid molecules join together to form long protein-like molecules. These protein-like molecules, or as we call them, proteinoids, upon simple contact with water in the laboratory, produce what is a kind of minimal cell.
The product of Dr. Fox's experiments, cells born in the test tube. They challenge all traditional concepts of life on Earth.
In our view, the formation of primordial cells on the early Earth must have occurred many times, many places. If the conditions were right, we see no reason why this process could not occur elsewhere in the universe.
There are other theories that attempt to explain the origin of life. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, but the universe in which it is placed is far older, perhaps 13 billion years old. Time enough for uncounted species to rise, create civilizations, and scatter them across the universe, reaching even the small, out-of-the-way planet called Earth. Dr. Leslie Orgel is a biologist at the Salk Institute in California. He and Nobel Prize winner Sir Francis Crick developed the theory of directed panspermia, the idea that life on Earth was sent here by a superior civilization. Dr. Orgel.
In the 19th century, there were two theories about how life could have got to the Earth from outside. One theory, which was due to Lord Kelvin in England, said that life arrived as a spore carried on a meteorite. And the other theory, which was popularized by Arrhenius in Sweden, suggested that a spore could have been blown directly from a planet on another solar system all the way to the Earth. Now, in the last 10 or 20 years, it's become more and more clear that these theories just won't work, that a spore coming from outer space would be destroyed by radiation long before it got here, and a meteorite probably could never escape from another solar system. Now, directed panspermia is a sort of last attempt to resurrect the theory that life could have come here from elsewhere, and the notion is that maybe life was deliberately sent here by a technological society on some other planet, probably in our own galaxy. If life had arisen on the Earth and evolved spontaneously here, it seems at least possible that we would have many very different forms of life competing with each other. In fact, we know that all living things have evolved from a single cell which inhabited the Earth about 3 or 4 billion years ago, and there don't seem to be any traces of any competitors of that sort of a cell. Now, there are perfectly normal biological explanations of this that don't call for anything magical or anything extraterrestrial, but even when all is said and done, it remains a little bit surprising that there isn't any evidence for other sorts of organisms than the ones we see. Now, if life had come from another planet, however it had got here, whether it came on a rocket or on a meteorite or as a single spore, we could understand very easily why there's only one sort of life, because we would all be descendants of a single ancestor, the one that happened to get here.
If a rocket had crossed the reaches of open space and brought to Earth the seeds of life, then it is possible that the seed of man also traveled here, directed by intelligence from another planet. Did the primitive Peruvians also know of these origins? If they did, it would explain why they carved fertility symbols from only one material, meteorites. For thousands of years, Neanderthal was the most advanced primate on Earth and a logical ancestor of man. But Neanderthal suddenly disappeared 35,000 years ago, and a new presence appeared on Earth, Cro-Magnon. So different is he from Neanderthal, most scientists cannot account for his presence. They know only that suddenly these creatures began to walk the Earth. We are their descendants. But the question remains, are they descended from the stars? Or did they receive from some ancient astronauts the knowledge and tools that enabled man to rise above the other creatures struggling for survival on Earth? Do ancient drawings commemorate such an event? Furrows in the California desert are merely scratches when seen from ground level. But from the air, they take on astonishing shapes. They were formed by men who lived here thousands of years ago. Men who could not possibly have sculpted these images without some direction from an observer high in the sky. All over the world, men have cut, shaped, and gouged the Earth to create images that could only be seen from the heavens. Thousands of years ago, someone carved remarkable earth drawings on the English hillsides. Were they placed there in tribute to some distant forebearer who came from space? Is that why man first turned his eyes upward toward the gods in search of his primal beginnings, and in the process began to question and learn of the gigantic forces at work in the universe? Is that how man's first science, astronomy, came into being? In the ancient world, there were no more accomplished astronomers than the Babylonians. Their cuneiform tablets marked the phases of Venus, the 4 moons of Jupiter, and the satellites of Saturn. None of these bodies or events can be seen without a telescope, a device invented 3,000 years after the tablets were carved. In the shadow of the Acropolis stands a 2,000-year-old observatory called the Tower of the Winds. Among the best preserved of all classical Greek buildings, the tower had frustrated archaeologists for years with the mystery of what it once had held. An early Greek text spoke of an astronomical clock mounted inside the tower. But how did it work? What did it look like? No one could say until a Greek sponge diver found these clockwork gears in the sea. Scientists estimated the gears had been built about 80 BC. Moreover, they determined that these plates and dials had been part of an extremely complex piece of machinery that had in fact been mounted in the Tower of the Winds. Finally, they concluded that it was an astronomical computer used to calculate the motions of the stars and planets. A stone circle crowned Sacsayhuaman. It may have been an astronomical calendar. No one knows precisely how it was used, but alternately, sun and shadow fill the boxes that compose its rings. The Inca called this the hitching post of the sun. With it, they marked the seasons, but it also had a religious purpose. It served to tie the Inca directly with the stars from which they claimed descent. And perhaps their claim was also made for all mankind.